Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Anthony Broome, and we have a special guest that we will introduce in just one moment. But before we do, make sure to like the video on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and head to the Wolverine.com. As always, use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. Michigan football, basketball, recruiting. Join the many fans over at the Wolverine.com. Let's welcome in our special guest from Pro Football Focus, Sam Monson, lead NFL analyst. Sam, let me start here. Looking at your Twitter bio, you're an Irish NFL analyst. It was St. Paddy's Day a couple weeks ago. What were we drinking? Green beers or what?
No, that's green beers. I think is it's an Americanism of St. Paddy's Day. You don't need to be what you're drinking. It's just the fact that you are. That'll get you going.
It's the fast foodification of St. Patrick's Day in America,
right?
I guess I'm not.
At least
real
we're still
Irish.
calling it Patrick's Day, though. The Paddy's thing, Paddy with the T, was always a problem.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably my bad then. Only 12.5% Irish here, so I can't really try to appropriate. But appreciate you being here. We're going to talk JJ McCarthy, some Michigan prospects in the draft, maybe a little Jim Harbaugh as well. And I know Anthony will start us off with a question about JJ.
Yeah, I mean, as we head into the meat and potatoes here of really the home stretch of the draft process, we're seeing a guy like JJ McCarthy, really, I won't even call it like a meteoric rise. It just seemed like before he even got to the NFL Combine, you're seeing him rise up draft boards, move into the top 15, move into the top 10. Now there's, this top 5 buzz potentially for him. And it seems like a lot of evaluators and people in your sphere, so to speak, some have judged him on his lack of production relative to the guys like Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, as to why he might not be NFL ready, while others will say the offense that he comes from. Obviously, he played under a now NFL coach in Jim Harbaugh, ran a lot of pro-style concepts. That might make him the most NFL ready of any of these guys. So I guess we'll start with, where do you stand on that and just your view of him as a prospect in general as we head into, the home stretch here?
Yeah, he's one of the more interesting prospects because right from the outset, the narrative was being put out there by kind of NFL insiders and people that talk to scouts, coaches, guys in the league. And all the way along, those guys were saying JJ McCarthy is somebody that the NFL likes more than the draft community, than the media, than the buzz that's out there generally. And that, I think, is why you're seeing what looks like a real rise in his draft stock. It's actually just that the closer we get, the more that is stacking evidence on top of evidence. And everybody from outside of NFL buildings is starting to catch up to the idea that the NFL does seem to see this guy significantly more attractively or as a much better prospect than the kind of media or people that were just watching film outside did. So I think that does seem to be real and Jim Harbaugh came out weeks ago and was like, he should be QB1 off the board. And that was treated as ridiculous. But the closer we get, the idea that he goes number 2 overall is not seeming particularly far-fetched right now. I think it would still be less likely for that to happen than somebody else, but it's becoming a real possibility now. So Jim Harbaugh's comments, the closer we get to the draft, are looking less and less crazy than they were going to give him credit for when he first uttered them. So yeah, then you get the complicating factor of, look, he does have, the sample size is a lot smaller, right? He wasn't asked to do the same things that some of these other quarterbacks were. Now, that doesn't mean he can't do them. It just means that he wasn't asked to do them. And Michigan won a national title, right? They're sending like 1 million people to the draft. Clearly, they didn't need to lean on JJ McCarthy the way some of these other teams needed to lean on their quarterback. It's a different assignment. It was a different role and responsibility for him. And then the other element you pointed out, that he was in a more pro-style offense than a lot of these other quarterbacks. And I think that really stands in his favor. I think NFL personnel people and NFL coaches love to see a guy running what they run, right? Because they don't need to do any projection. They don't need to figure out how what he's doing in college translates to the schemes and the play concepts that they're running. They can actually see him running the play concepts that they're running. Now, maybe he's doing it less than, you know, other guys in terms of just volume of reps, but they're seeing him actually do the like for like thing that they're going to ask him to do at the next level. And I think that's a big thing, certainly for coaches. I think they love seeing that. So I think you put it all together and you have a quarterback that's always had all the physical tools. It's always had the kind of prototypical traits. They are seeing him execute the things that they're going to ask him to do, the concepts that they're going to need him to do at the next level. And most NFL personnel, I think, are fine with the idea. They're not hung up on the volume thing. Like, they don't care that he was throwing the ball less than some other guys. A lot of that, I think, generally is overblown as a criticism anyway. Like, it's not, you know, it's not, nobody ever, like, anyone that thinks they threw the ball less because they didn't trust JJ McCarthy, I think is just missing the point. So that, I don't think, has ever been a fair or valid criticism. And the fact that it's a lower sample size, I think the NFL cares less about that than maybe other people do.
It's great to go high in the draft. Like, he could go number 2, as you mentioned. People are starting to talk about that a little bit more. But, I mean, fit is also important. You know, I think Minnesota was kind of a hot name and still is, with potentially JJ if they move up, or, you know, maybe earlier in the process. It looked like maybe they could get him at their original pick. What is a good fit for him? And then, like, what do you see in terms of, would it be good if he was eased in a little bit more, maybe like a red shirt type of year like Patrick Mahomes did, or, you know, could he take over right away? What would be best for his career in terms of where he goes and how they kind of handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I think environment is huge for young quarterbacks. So it's sort of a three-pronged situation, in my opinion. It's number one, what is the scheme that they're running? Is that going to be beneficial? You know, are you going to land somewhere with a Shanahan offense like CJ Stroud did, where you have the kind of meta system in today's NFL? That's huge. Number two is, what's the pass protection going to look like? What's your offensive line going to look like in front of you? That's helped by the scheme, so it's not completely independent. And then number three is, who are you throwing to? What is the receiving talent like around you? So those three things put together, I think, determine what a quarterback situation is at the next level. You look at Carolina last year, none of the three were working. You know, they had a dysfunctional coaching staff that weren't on the same page. He had virtually no receiving talent, and what looked like an okay offensive line on paper was one of the worst in the NFL when it actually got onto the field. So Bryce Young had nothing to work with. CJ Stroud ended up having maybe all three of them by the time it all worked out. So a team like Minnesota on paper, I think, ticks all three of those boxes. They've got a good coaching setup, a good coaching system, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. They've got receivers to work with. The offensive line is maybe the weakest of the three areas, but it's still got a pair of really good tackles. And then just the interior is a bit of a question mark. So I think the Vikings would absolutely be a good landing spot for him. They've also got the ability to ease him in and to play a guy like Sam Darnold for, you know, a month, 2 months if they need to. I don't know if he's going to need that. And as for that question generally, I don't think there's necessarily a hard and fast rule. And even for a guy like McCarthy, I think generally it's unlikely to ever do a quarterback harm sitting and learning from the bench. But I think the reverse is not true. You can probably definitely do a quarterback harm by putting him out there too early. So, right. You know, any team looking at McCarthy, I think if they want to ease him in, it's not going to be a bad thing. If they want to rush him in and he isn't ready for that, then that could do damage. So I think generally, if he can land somewhere that has the runway to give him half a season, you know, to get himself up to speed, to get himself ready and used to the NFL level, practice speed, all those kinds of things, and then throw him out there, I think that's better than the reverse, where you need to play him day one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to move into Blake Corum here. I know you guys were talking running backs this week. I think at last check, he was, I believe, 75th on your guys' board, the last update that you did. And what we've seen from him the last few years is a lot of, you know, the short yardage smash mouth type of production. You know, we've seen him slim down a little bit this offseason, work out of the slot, you know, as he tries to prove that he can do some more of those other things. And, you know, I guess my question for you would be, you know, do you see something like that changing his stock heading into the home stretch? I mean, when you look at a guy that's 5'8", 205 on paper, I know there's probably a lot of NFL teams that look at that and are a little uneasy about that, just given, you know, the workload that he already has and just what that next step might look like. But where do you see his stock right now? And do you think he can be a guy that, is he a bell cow? Is he someone who's more of a tandem type of guy? Like, where do you see him fitting at the next level?
I love Blake Corum. I think he's the best running back in this draft. I think he's being not necessarily unfairly, but perhaps too criticized for the fact that he wasn't quite the same guy coming back off injury. You know, unless we think that that is a permanent status going forward, that injury simply took away the best of Blake Corum's career. There are times where an injury takes a year to come back from, right? There's how quickly can you get back on the field? And then there's when are you actually 100%? When are you the same guy you were before the injury? I think we just saw Blake Corum take a while to go from one state of being to the other. He was back on the field pretty quickly, but he wasn't the same guy, and he visibly wasn't the same guy. But I think towards the end of the season, we started to see more of the 2022 version of Blake Corum. And that guy, in my opinion, is the best running back in this draft. And if that's who you're getting going forward, you're getting an incredible talent. You're getting a guy who I think is the most natural runner in terms of exploiting gaps, in terms of maximizing what's there. The only real flaw in his game, I think, is the top end speed. But you can say that about a lot of the running backs in this draft. There's not necessarily a ton of these home run hitters, and that's the sort of smallest negative anyway. Like if the guy's making it 50 yards before somebody's chasing him down from behind, I'm okay with that. It's a pretty useful play to get 50 yards before you're tackled. So I think that being your biggest weakness is fine. The bell cow thing, you know, maybe he's not going to be an every down 300 carry a season type of back, but there's not many of those guys in the NFL anymore anyway. So I don't think that's a massive problem either. There's sort of 3 or 4 of those guys in the league. Everybody else is operating from some kind of backfield committee, and there's no reason that Blake Corum can't be the lead back in that kind of dynamic.
No doubt. Moving to Roman Wilson at the wide receiver spot. I was talking to your coworker, Trevor Sikkema, a couple weeks ago, and he said probably second round for Roman Wilson, but he wouldn't be surprised if he fell in the lap of somebody in the late first round, like a Kansas City at 32 or Buffalo at 28, like really good situations with great quarterbacks that you can, immediately make an impact for. And they need, downfield guys. I know it's weird to say need with the Chiefs, but we all know about their, struggles at receiver from last year. I guess how high could he go and how could he fit maybe like plug right into a dynamic offense right away?
Yeah, the wide receiver group this year, I don't quite know how it's going to play out in the draft because it's a phenomenal group of wide receivers. It's the best class to come along for years, and I don't know how that's going to influence teams when it comes to the way they approach the draft. On the one hand, you could say there's so many amazing receivers, so many first-round talents. You could get 7 of these guys drafted in the first round because everyone goes wide receiver crazy and starts just picking them off late in the first round in terms of value. On the other hand, you could have teams that need wide receivers look at this group and say, we're going to be able to get a good quality wide receiver in the 3rd round. Like there's no point taking one now. We can spend this pick on a different position. We can come back in the 2nd or the 3rd round and we can wait on wide receiver because it's so deep. The class is so incredibly strong. And I'm not quite sure which way it's going to go. And maybe it'll be a mix of the two. Some teams will jump on these guys in the 1st round. Some teams will want to wait and use that pick somewhere else. But it means that, anything wouldn't shock me. Like a guy like Roman Wilson being drafted in the 20s in the 1st round wouldn't shock me at all. He's absolutely got the skill set for that. And if you were doing that, 1st round grade in abstract terms, independent of draft year, he absolutely has a 1st round skill set. But equally, him lasting to the 3rd round wouldn't shock me either, because this group is so stacked that teams might just want to wait on these receivers. And I think also you could order kind of wide receiver 4 through 16 in almost any order you want and not be crazy. They're so tightly bunched as well as just being really good and deep.
Yeah, there are a lot of Michigan prospects in this class. It feels like the core group of that, obviously McCarthy, Corum, Roman Wilson, Chris Jenkins, I'd probably throw in that group. Mike Sainer still in that group as well. Outside of those guys, because this looks like it can be a team that sets that record of guys that were drafted in a single year. I know Georgia had the record a few years ago with 15. Maybe Michigan gets up into that 16, 17, 18 range. But of those guys after that core 5 or 6, I mean, who are you looking at in this Michigan class that you think might have a chance to be a day 3 guy that has a long and productive NFL career?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Junior Colson is one guy that's intriguing. I think when you start looking at how the NFL has been drafting linebackers recently, they're not good at it. Like, they don't know where they're going at the moment. Like, linebacker, number one, the job has gotten so hard at the NFL level. Every offensive development over the last 15 years has essentially been designed to put linebackers in conflict every single snap and make them try and cover 2 or 3 different things and make them always wrong. So, and when you start looking at, first linebacker drafted in the last 10 years, it's not a good group of players. Like, the league is not good at identifying these guys, but linebacker is still as valuable as it's ever been. So, somebody like him who's got proven high quality play in a good defense in an NFL system, I think absolutely has the chance to not just be drafted, but stick and become a good player at the next level. And it's definitely someone I think worth rolling the dice on. And then Michigan, the other area they've got a great track record with is offensive linemen. And it's someone like, Zach Zinter, I think would be an intriguing guy. And also because they don't just have a track record with offensive linemen and sending good guys to the NFL, but they have a track record of some of these linemen who are sort of, when you start reading the scouting reports and you look at the negative column, and it's always, he's sort of too big and slow and needs to be in a specific offense. These guys keep coming into the league and being better than that. Someone like Michael Owenu was supposed to be limited to, can't play him a tackle. He's a guard. He's too slow. He's too big. That guy's a good caliber starting right tackle and just got paid like it by the Patriots. So somebody like that coming into the league and being, like a 10-year starter on the offensive line absolutely wouldn't shock me either.
Are they going to break the record to put you on the spot?
It's tough. That Georgia team was absolutely stacked and loaded as well. I think they've got a shot at it, though. Like, this has been, I mean, obviously the combine, they broke that record, right? Sending the biggest number of people to the combine in a single year. They've got a real shot.
Well, knowing Jim Harbaugh, the personality, the enigma to a certain extent of who he is, both from his days in the NFL, then obviously the last 9 years at Michigan, assuming that the Los Angeles Chargers are not going to draft J.J. McCarthy, which is obviously a very safe assumption to make. If you had to pick one guy from this Michigan class that you think Jim Harbaugh would either pounding the table for in LA, or someone that you've identified that fits what they're looking for perfectly, who is that guy?
I feel like Jim Harbaugh would love to bring Blake Corum into the offense. Like, he reminds me a little bit of Austin Eckler anyway. I think there's some similarities to their game. Obviously, the Chargers got rid of Eckler. Now, Eckler wasn't a Jim Harbaugh guy, so it's not like they have a direct tie that way. But I feel like running back is a need. They need to bolster that position, even with guys like Gus Edwards coming in. Obviously, it's also the type of game that Jim Harbaugh wants to play. Like, he wants to run the ball. He's more of an old school mentality than some of these other coaches. I also feel like he would value the leadership, the tone setting capacity that a guy like Corum brings to the table. If I was picking one guy that I think Harbaugh, and the other element, by the way, is the fact that none of these guys are going to go in the first round, the running back class, that is. These are all going to be day 2, day 3 prospects, which is when the other people in the Chargers building will be happy to make that pick. If he was advocating to draft a running back in the first round, he might have some problems. But now that he just has to sell somebody on a day 2 or day 3 pick on him, I think that's a much easier thing to get done. So I'm not going to say I would be surprised if he didn't come out of this draft with Blake Corum, but I definitely think that Harbaugh would be looking to bring him in.
I could see them just stacking running backs like John did with Gus Edwards and other guys in Baltimore too. Where one goes down and there's another one there. How do you think Jim's going to do in the NFL, and how long will it take? I know their roster, especially on offense, seems a little depleted right now, maybe skill position wise, based on some of the moves they made. But what do you think about what he's done so far and how quickly he can win there? Because I think a lot of people assume at some point he's going to figure it out enough to win at some level.
Yeah, I mean, he's had success everywhere he's been, right? At the college and the NFL landscape. And there aren't many coaches that you can say that about ever, like in football history, let alone in recent times. So you would have to assume he will have success at some point. It's definitely the things that they've done to kind of dismantle the offense are interesting to an extent. Some of them needed to happen. You know, they had a lot of ugly contracts on that roster when he walked in there. So cleaning house makes some sense. Doing it right at the start of a guy like Jim Harbaugh's tenure makes some sense because, you know, he's got credit in the bank. He's not going to be under pressure immediately. So they needed to kind of sweep away some of those bad deals and just start over. But it does mean that they've got work to do. You know, Justin Herbert is the biggest and most important part of that team. He's there. So they have the quarterback thing set, but now they need to go find him weaponry and need to make sure that offensive line doesn't dismantle itself and, you know, build the imposing defense that Brandon Staley was never able to manufacture there. So, you know, there's definitely significant work to be done. And in a division that has the Kansas City Chiefs in it, you know, you're under pressure because the bar isn't just be okay. The bar is the best team in football, just to get out of your own division. So it's going to take some work, but I do think that they can create a pretty good team reasonably quickly.
And then Michigan guys that are in the NFL player-wise, was reading your story recently of the top 100 guys, players in the NFL. A couple Michigan guys in the top 35 there. Nico Collins, Texans wide receiver at 34, and then Aiden Hutchinson, you know, the beloved Lions defensive end at 17, I believe it was. Where can their careers go? I mean, Nico Collins, you know, has kind of become one of the go-to guys for CJ Stroud there as they build that thing out. And then Aiden, you know, maybe in that next tier of defensive ends behind the top guys we all know, but where can those two go in their careers? Because they're still obviously very young.
Yeah, I mean, Hutchinson, I think, has already shown that his ceiling is, you know, as good as anybody's. You're right. He's probably at the very top of that second tier of edge rushers, but the first tier are all, you know, defensive player of the year candidates in any given season, like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, like the Micah Parsons. These guys are all, like, arguably each one of them is the best player in the NFL, right? So the standard at that position is crazy. So to be at the top of the next tier down still puts you in a sort of all-pro level in any given season. I mean, Hutchinson just broke 100 pressures over a season. There had only been a couple of guys to do that before he did it. So he's shown that he's got that crazy potential within him. And then Nico Collins, just a fantastic year. I liked him as a kind of sleeper prospect when he was coming out, and liked him as a potential breakout candidate. And then it really just catapulted itself above and beyond where I thought he would go. He looked like an absolute superstar and someone that can be a true, you know, #1 elite level wide receiver. And as long as that situation stays intact in terms of CJ Stroud and Bobby Slowick at offensive coordinator, you know, the sky's the limit for him. I mean, he looked like a true #1 star.
You know, I look at this, you know, the top of this, the draft order, and obviously you have the, you know, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers sitting there at number 5. And, you know, it's kind of an interesting spot for them to be in, given that you could have 4 quarterbacks that go ahead of them. If 4 quarterbacks don't go, your pick could be one that someone trades up to get that 3rd or 4th guy. So, you know, if you're the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, you know, you either have a shot to move back and get a bunch of capital, or you have a chance to have one of those blue chip guys, whether it's, you know, whoever your pick of top wide receiver is, Joe Alt, whoever it might be. I guess if you're the Chargers with that pick, you know, put yourself in that GM chair for a second. What's your most ideal outcome at number 5, and what direction do you see them going?
Yeah, I mean, this pick was like the most popular pick in the draft in terms of an obvious trade down before they got rid of all their wide receivers. Now, with Mike Williams gone and Keenan Allen traded away, they almost have to draft their favorite wide receiver at that spot, I think. And if the draft unfolds the way most people think it will, you know, 3 quarterbacks, 1, 2, 3, and then either the 4th quarterback or Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4, then that puts Malik Neighbors, I think, front and center in the Chargers draft strategy. Like he will be most people's consensus next wide receiver available in any normal year. Either Neighbors or Odunze from Washington, I think, would be the top wide receiver available. So you just pick one of them, whichever your favorite is, and hope that you've got your #1 wide receiver.
how far is the gap, or how wide is the gap between Harrison and the rest of the receivers? Obviously, a guy Michigan fans know a lot, Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big gap at all. I think those three, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors from LSU, I think those three guys are all really, really top prospects. All of them are top 10 talents. In any normal season, each one of them would be wide receiver 1 in a given draft class, and they've just all hit the NFL at the same time. I do think that Marvin Harrison is the best of the three, the cleanest prospect, but I don't think it's a big gap.
Gotcha. Just curious about that. And then this is the last one for me. Appreciate you, man. This has been awesome. I guess, is there, and I was talking to Trevor Sikkema about this recently as well, kind of what stands out about Michigan players who go to the NFL, or even when you're watching Michigan, right, or studying tape of a prospect there? Like, is there a common thread? Is it, the pro system that they run, or, the way they prepare, or, the way that their strength and conditioning program seems to ready them? I mean, is there something common about these Michigan guys that you see time and time again come through the college level to the NFL?
I mean, I think it is that readiness, the fact that they've had Harbaugh there and they've been running effectively a professional program at the college level. These guys don't have an adjustment period the way some other prospects do. They are doing NFL things. They're professionals. They're college professionals already. So all you need to do is to just plug them into a new place and a new system, and they're ready to go. Like some of these other college prospects, they're not in a sort of professional environment, really. And they're running schemes that are very, very different from what they're going to have to do at the next level. So the adjustment is just significantly different. The Michigan guys understand what the requirements are going to be at the next level. They're already conditioned to that level of toughness and the mental strains and requirements that it's going to need. And they're just good to go. I think they're the kind of common theme is this plug and play ability that they bring to the table.
AB, anything else before we send Sam on his way?
No, I mean, we could have him here for a couple hours talking about the 18 to 20 guys that were at Michigan's Pro Day last week. But no, man, really appreciate it. Again, I know they're going to keep up. You guys are always obviously extremely busy on draft weekend. We're going to be uniquely busy this year. So we appreciate the insight and you coming on with us.
Yep, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so that is Sam Monson of PFF. You can follow him at PFF_Sam on Twitter /X, and follow all of his coverage. Sam, anything you're working on right now that's going to be that people should look out for?
No, obviously we're doing the PFF NFL podcast all the way up to the draft, and then we'll have our own draft show live during those first couple of days.
There we go. So follow all that over at Pro Football Focus. Love the guys over there. Love the content. That's going to do it for our show today. Again, like the video on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and head to thewolverine.com as always. But thank you to Sam, and we'll see everyone next time.